Welcome to another episode of the Oak and Rock podcast. I am your host, Anthony Miglarino from Peaceful Fathers, alongside Zac Small from the FamilyAlpha.com. And today we're going to talk to you about a somewhat different topic. We usually say that peaceful parenting takes a long time. You have to put in a lot of work. But today we're going to share with you a couple tips and tricks to help ease that transition. Zac, you got some ideas about how we can help these men out today?
Oh, absolutely, man. It's funny. We talk a lot of smack about there's no easy path. There's no, quick way to get to it. Well, this video is the opposite of that. We are going to talk about some quick tips and tricks you can apply to immediately improve, your standing with the family. The first one is going to be preventative maintenance. You don't wait for your engine to break down or to seize up before you change the oil. That is corrective maintenance. You've got to correct a broken issue. Preventative keeps it from breaking down. So when it comes to dealing with your children in a peaceful environment, be preventative. Last night we ran a Q&A, and if you're facing the same problems, oftentimes brushing teeth, going to bed, eating dinner, vegetables, whatever, if day after day after day you're doing the same thing, you should know it's coming. You should know, hey, dinner's going to be rough. Following that, if they've got practice for sports, but they're always complaining about going to soccer or football practice, and then we're going to have trouble at brushing your teeth in bedtime. You know it's coming. So let's take some steps to prevent that. One of the ones that I use is I immediately address the thing I know is coming down the pipeline. So when they were younger, if it was brushing teeth or going to bed, hey guys, you know that we're going to have a snack tonight. We've got to make sure we're going to brush our teeth really well though. Dude, I would say this when they got home from school. I would say this at dinner. Hey, later in about 4 hours from now, we're going to be brushing our teeth and going to bed. I would plant that seed. I would water it. So be preventative. If you know something's coming down and it's going to be rough, try to get ahead of it by addressing it and talk about how it's fun or how you're going to get through it or why you need to do that thing. So for sports practice or eating your dinner, just talk about it. Oh, hey, for dinner tonight, we've got some broccoli. Now, I know you don't really like your leafy greens. You're all about meat because you're a carnivore. But we're going to get some of that because I was talking to this special trainer, this dude who works out a lot. He was telling me that with broccoli, your muscles grow faster. So for me, that worked with my son because he wanted muscles. My daughter, believe it or not, is probably more competitive mentally than my son. So when she hears me say that to him, she's like, oh, I'm going to eat all the broccoli. And now my son doesn't want to be outdone. And now my kids are wolfing down the vegetables and their meat at the dinner table. And guess what? It became a fun family thing. Hey, I ate my vegetables and they're flexing. And before, not too long ago, vegetables, oh, gross. It was just a small shift. But by being preventative in that, I prevented that blow up from ever happening. So one of the best tips I can give somebody, be preventative with the whole thing and have fun with it.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's our job. Be that father who's ready for any challenge. So the next tip or trick, and this is one that oftentimes fathers have a really hard time understanding, right? Is to give your child power. And I hear this from one of the fraternity brothers. I got to give a shout out to Josh Clare.
Yeah.
If there's a goal or something that needs to be completed, let your child have some say about how that's going to happen. And all the different ways that we come to be a parent, right? We're always on call. There's always something our kid's going to need. But if you have a task of loading the dishwasher or unloading the dishwasher, right? Give them a little bit of power to how that task gets done, right? Tell them, oh, we got to unload the dishwasher. That's the job. It has to get done. How do you want to do it? Should we load the bottom tray first, or do you want to load the top tray? Unload, whatever you're doing. And it sounds, it sounds almost silly, but when you interact with your children, you do want them to have some say of the control of their life, even if it's unloading a dishwasher or if it's cleaning up a room. And the more power that you give them, the more confidence they're going to have. So instead of demanding that a task gets done, right, say, hey, we have to do this now, you have to do it. And if you don't do it, normally most parents, they resort to punishment or they resort to taking things away. And that's only going to cause resentment. It's going to cause a lot of frustration. And the worst part about it is they don't learn anything, right? Every time we interact with our kid, that is a teachable moment. I don't care what it is. There's always something that their young minds need to absorb and learn. So when there is a task, go back to that trick. Give them some power, give them some say. Ask them questions. What do you want to do? When do you want to do this? Or how do you want to go about solving this problem? And I think that you'll find them more receptive, not only to just help during that task, but they'll be proud of getting things accomplished, which is also great.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off that one. First off, shout out to the grappling dad. Josh is solid. He's taught me quite a few things. He actually taught my son a few wrestling techniques, which is cool. So we'll be putting those into motion soon enough. With putting your child into a position of power, not only are they going to be able to feel, hey, I'm in charge. I'm running this. This is my schedule. I get to show me how I want to do it. So they're going to feel good about it because they get to choose. But also you're teaching them, all right, I applied this. I made these choices and these are the consequences. So I waited to do this after, but now I can't do that other thing I wanted to do. But they own it because mom and dad didn't tell them to do that. They did. So instead of wanting to lash out at you or confront or be, resistant to it, they just understand like, oh, I made that choice and here is the result. So tomorrow I'm going to make a different choice. And when you were telling that, one of the things that stuck out is we let our kids choose, when are you going to brush your teeth? When are you going to read your book? Because you're going to brush your teeth, read your book before bed. But the order, I don't care when that happens. If you want to watch a show, that's fine. So how are we going to do all these things together? You let me know. And what they learned is my kids wanted to brush their teeth. And before it was right time to go to bed. So they brush their teeth. Then they would come up, we'd watch a show together, and then they go to bed. It got done, but the order changed. And both kids agreed because I let them, they work together like a little team. I'm like, all right, you guys come together. Come tell me and mom when you're ready. And Jackie and I will go over and we'll pretend we're just not paying attention. And you can hear them huddling up and what's the game plan? And these very big plans go into these very little things. And they'll come down like, all right, we decided this. Awesome. I got what I wanted. I got the end goal, which is having kids with good dental hygiene, and going to bed. But they were empowered to do it. And they had this little team building exercise too, where they both presented their case to each other. Like, all right, we agree on this. So you taught them to act as a team. Your goal as a parent was met as to what you wanted for your children, and they were in charge. So they learned, hey, this works, this doesn't. The next day, we'll go back, we'll reevaluate. So don't always rule with an iron fist where you think your way is the right way. You've got to teach them to become their independent beings. Like we're trying to raise adults here who can make choices. And you see a lot of adults now who can't. Why? Because they were never given the freedom to choose. Their parents told them everything until they were 18 plus, and then they had to figure it out. Well, at that point, they're looking for someone to tell them what to do. And that is not conducive to a free adult or a free identity and personality. So I'm absolutely 100% on that one. Empower your children.
Yeah, man. And that will open them up to have other people manipulate them easier. If they don't know what they're doing, right? They'll be prey once they go out into the world.
So one of the other ones that we talk about
I wanted to just ask you one thing. With giving them power and talking about how your kids were negotiating with each other and having a plan, do you ever worry that they're going to overrun your home? They're going to take control of everything?
I would love to see them try. I would love that, because if I can be thwarted, if I can be dethroned by my kids, that means I've raised something better than myself.
Yes.
Dude, I love it. And you know what's cool? And this is totally off topic. When they come together and come up with a plan and they're like, hey, Dad, I think we should try things this way. And it's better than what I was thinking of doing. I'm like, you know what? That's a great idea. I totally was going to do that anyway. But you know what? Because you came up with it, let's try it your way.
Yeah.
Dude, your kids
I say you got that from me either way.
I pass you. Your dad's smarts. Dude, it's a real thing. When you get them, they start thinking outside the box in all things. They'll come up, hey, Dad, I think we should do this and then go to the playground. Or we should go do that. Like, it's just cool to see them making choices. And every now and then I'm like, yeah, totally, let's do that. It goes against everything I wanted to do. Who cares? At the end of the day, like, does it really matter? No. If you go to library, the playground, the library, let them feel like they have that kind of control. And honestly, they do have that control. They should. You should have that doorway open to your children that wouldn't be open to absolute strangers. They're your kids. They should have a access to you that's special compared to others. If you're more worried about internet strangers than listening to your children, something's wrong. Those are your kids. They should have access, just like your wife. Some random women shouldn't have the same privilege or access to you that your wife has to you. That title comes with that earned privilege. Your children, they're your kids. That's a privilege they have that goes both ways. You give them time that you wouldn't give strangers, but you listen to them as well. And again, sometimes they come out with things that are smarter than what you were going to do.
It's a good thing.
You were talking about negotiation, though. You brought that word up, and that's one of the ones we wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
So when it comes to negotiating and, interacting with your kids, you learn, a great tip is to speed that process up. Learn how to create win-win scenarios to where you're interacting with your kids in a way that, like I just gave that example, they're happy brushing their teeth and you're getting what you wanted. And maybe you negotiated something out of that. Hey, you can watch that show that we weren't going to watch. We were going to read and do this, but tonight you can watch that show. But let's make sure we do our teeth first. Okay, I'll do my teeth in the show. If it's going to bed, well, I'd really like you to read. Well, can I stay up late? You know what? If you start reading here, I'll let you stay up in your bed while reading that book 15 minutes past your normal bedtime. So you can stay up late, but we're also going to get on that book. Okay. Maybe that's the mutual ground where it's a win-win. They get to stay up late. Your child's reading. Maybe that's the angle you take. So instead of always running again with that iron fist, isn't that the same thing as having a totalitarian government or a dictatorship or something like that? You wouldn't want to live under that. You wouldn't want to be in that environment. So why do you put your kids in that environment? I'll never understand the hypocritical parents who they're not working with their kids. They're working against their kids. But then they tell their kids, hey, you should stand up against people who are trying to take advantage of you. You should stand up against overreach of authority. You're not letting them do that. You're not instilling that in them. You're telling them obey. And sometimes it's about negotiation, not just do what I say because I said so.
Yeah, 100%, Zach. The other side of that, and what most traditional parenting follow, is win lose. That's how most of us were raised, and that's a lot of what you were describing, right? That this is what we often see all the time. And when I started getting into the negotiation and everything that you were speaking about, we lost your video.
I'm bringing it back.
Gotcha.
I got you.
But no, to get back on topic, everything that you were talking about is a win, right? It's win-win. If we can create those scenarios in our home, we can get away from the win-lose. And a lot of times, if you base the relationship you have with your child where everything that happens, dad has to win or mom has to win, right? We don't care about what's going on with you. We don't care what you want to do. We don't care how you feel about the situation. It has to be about us. What you're doing is you're showing them what unhealthy relationships look like you said before, right? We want them to grow into adults, and we don't want them to be in relationships where the other person is trying to hold that power over them, or to be accepted that they have to somehow please that person, right? We want them to be in win-win scenarios their whole life. Whether it's if you had a job and your boss was degrading you and screaming at you, or not treating you properly, or not even giving you a raise that you felt you deserved, to be able to have that skill to negotiate, that's going to stick with your kids their whole life, right? No matter what they do, whether they open a business, they go and work for a company, it starts when they're young. It starts in the home. And if we can start to teach them that skill when they're younger, they're going to be great benefits when they get older.
Well, with that too, I mean, people put a lot of emphasis and stress on what it is we're doing. There's a lot of like, oh, parenting, it's heavy, it's deep, it's hard work. Dude, I used to say I'm the most chill and zen dude I know, but people see me online and they think I'm like a hyper intense and always on. Dude, I am always fooling around and laughing inside my home, and I thought I was like the king of it. And then I met you, and there's a close tie there. I might be a little more chill. You always got that maybe it's your accent. It seems like you're always on. But I will say this: you're a very relaxed dude. And people might not get that because on our message when we're talking, we're intensity, be a man. Like let's go, rise up, let's push further, let's go harder, let's see what we can really do. They see that side of us, but when the cameras are off and we're just hanging out with the kids, we are straight chilling. And half the time we're recording, we're laughing about it. So that's a great tip to bring to the home is look, this should be fun. Like you should be having a good time. Life should not be this fiasco where every day is a struggle and a grind. look, take that weight off of you, take that pressure off of you, or that desire somehow to not appear weak in any moment. Fathers who laugh with their kids are not weak. Fathers who laugh with their kids are some of the strongest men I know. Fathers who are laughed at by their kids, that's a different story. And that's a different video that we'll record. I'm talking about men who have relationships with their children where everyone's having a good time. And that home is filled with light and brightness and connection. And even when there's conflict, it's still respectable. Understanding how to balance that conflict in a good and healthy manner. And that's something we'll dive to in a little bit. But right now, I really want it to be understood. And I've had family members tell me this who I've not seen in a while. Hey, I thought you were going to be way more serious and intense. We're sitting in our cookout. I'm like, yo, I don't give a shit. I'm just chilling and hanging out and having a good time with my kids. You see my message online, and it is when it's time to get serious for work, I'm very serious. But when it comes to interacting with my kids, not every interaction should be a serious one. Sit down across from me, hyper-focused on improvement. Have a good time. Enjoy your kids. Laugh with them. They spilled the milk. Pff, knock your glass of water over. Who cares? Have fun with it. Don't forget that in building a good life, you should enjoy the life you're living.
Yeah, have fun is a big one. You always want to have fun with your kids to the best of your ability. And you set that bar, right? If you're always stressed, your kids are going to be stressed. So another tip would be to decode the behavior. And this is something we've spoken about before. It comes up often. We immediately react to when our kids have a temper tantrum or when they misbehave. And, besides having fun, we also need to try to remain calm. So that's where decoding the behavior comes in. Every stage, every area of development as your kid grows up from when they're born to they become teenagers, right? There's different ways that they learn to express themselves. Obviously, young kids are not going to be able to express themselves the way that an adult would. And we have to be aware of that. We have to recognize those patterns. So if let's say your kid hits you in the back of the head, don't get outraged. Don't get upset. Especially if he's 1 or 2 years old, could be a sign of him saying, "Hey, Dad, I need more attention." But oftentimes we see it as, "Hey, don't hit," right? We don't hit, and then we wind up hitting them, or we wind up, putting them in a timeout and letting them suffer by themselves. Start to decode these messages, right? Don't be hypersensitive or overreactive yourself. Learn to respond better. And it starts from taking a step back, being calm, and saying, all right, what does my kid need from me right now? He hit me in the back of the head. We want to teach that lesson that we don't hit, but we need to make sure that we're communicating that first, right? We need to say, hey, whatever age your child is, right? We don't hit in our family. This is something we don't do. We don't want to hurt people. And then you say, what is it that you need from me, right? How can I help you? And you'll find if you start doing that, things will de-escalate very quickly, right? You'll have a child who is emotional, who's not sure of all these big feelings of frustration going on within them. And the moment that you tone it down is a moment that they can tone it down. And then when they're calm, that's the time to have the no hitting conversation, right? Once you give them a hug or you bring them close to you and you're making eye contact, this is when you can start to connect, and your words will be a lot more effective than when you're raging or you're upset. So decode the message. It's important.
I think that ties in well with connection. As you were saying that there's a lot of times where people get caught up in the moment. And I guess this is a tip too, choosing to connect almost in spite of the fact that you've been conditioned to divide or to attack. My son, he's a pitcher in baseball. And I'll never forget there was one time where he was just having an off game. Like he could just not lock it in. And it's, for whatever reason, it was just an off day. I've had off days. He was having an off day. And when the other coach took him out, he had like a little bit of an attitude and he was walking off. And I remember somebody like, oh, your dad's got a blah, blah, blah. I walked over. I was like, hey, man, I give him a big hug. I was like, we got another game tomorrow. You're good. I was like, let it go. And he just walked over, sat down. He's having his little pity party. But instead of going at him the way everybody thought that I was going to, because, hey, you got to lock it in. It's sports. Chin up. Respect the game. All these things you see. I believe in that. I do believe, be competitive, respect the game, do all these things. But in that moment, it was I don't even know how old he was. Let's say 9. It There's a frustrated kid who wanted to help, and he was embarrassed in front of all these people that he couldn't do it. And he walked off, and he was just hurting on the inside, embarrassed and shamed, and whatever that comes with failing in a sport. He needed a dad in that moment. He needed someone to be like, hey, the whole world right now thinks I should be mad as your coach. I'm your father first. Come here. Big hug. And it was kind of like a silent moment. And I'll never forget that. And I bring that into a lot of our home. When they have an attitude, or like you were saying, if they hit you in the back of the head, instead of blowing up like you've been conditioned to, and that's a normal reaction in our day and age, connect. Hey, come here, buddy. Give me a hug. We're not going to hit. I love you. I love you way too much to hit. We don't do that, right? And then just talk about it. There's a lot going on in the world today, from mandates, masks, isolation, lockdowns. It just seems like everything's politicized and crazy, like everything, everywhere. The world is wanting you to divide. And what I've learned, and what's served me very well, personally, professionally, in almost every facet of my life, is to do the opposite of what the masses are doing. And when they're saying divide and isolate, I'm connecting and networking more. When they say feel down, I rise up. Be dark, I'm going to be light. I'm not going to have my home dictated by what's happening at the macro level of society. My home is where I can control things. My home is where I can ensure that we're not allowing that darkness to permeate and come inside. We choose to connect in this world of division. And it's led to great results. I mean, our COVID experience, well, COVID sucks. The world sucks in COVID land. But the small family, dude, we've had a great time. Wonderful things have happened to us in our lives. We've come together, and dude, we have taken our bumps and bruises. It's been a rough 2021, but mentally, my kids are squared away, and we're connected as a family. And I think that's because we chose to always make it a priority to connect to one another as a family. I'm still looking at my camera over here, even though the battery died. So now I've got to start looking up here. But the point is, a lot of these kids suffering from mental health issues, feeling isolated. I have no friends. I have no point in life. There's no purpose to me. It's because they're alone. But as a father, if you choose to connect in a peaceful environment, your child will always know my dad's got my back. No matter how weird the world gets, I'm connected. And as a dad, you've got to break that habit of wanting to attack, correct, force something down their throat for them to learn a lesson. Man, sometimes just give them the hug in the middle of the chaos, calm it all down.
Well said. And just to be clear for all the fathers doubting what you said, this is exactly how you raise strong children. Everything that we've been taught, or traditional parenting, of what we've seen, is destroying these kids. It's creating adults who can't exist in the world. These I don't even want to label them, but they're creating young adults and even older men who they don't take care of themselves. They have no self-esteem. They lack confidence. When you take a peaceful parenting approach, this is exactly what we're doing, right? You're building strong, confident, and resilient children. Prove me otherwise. This is the way, right? This is what I've seen. This is what you're seeing. A lot of the men we speak to, it's happening. Whether they're ready for it or not, it's coming to them. Speaking of conflict, so another tip is another trick that you can use, peaceful parenting. When conflicts when they do arise, when conflicts happen, which they will, right? They're a normal part of the family unit. They happen. People disagree. This is when we talk about peaceful parenting. It's not always perfect. It's not always, the kids, you snap your fingers and they remember everything you said. You're going to have conflict. So don't be afraid of it, right? We want to, I wouldn't say embrace it, but we want to acknowledge it and know that it's there and know that we're going to have disagreements, but we have to navigate to find the best answer without using violence, without using manipulation, without bribing our kids, right? We want to find the best way that we can do this peacefully. And this is something that will develop your kids. This is something that will help them become a better person if they know how to resolve conflicts, if they know how to understand, if they understand that the people who care about them will take the time out also to have these conversations, or I don't want to say fights, but to resolve the conflict. And I think that's part of a healthy relationship. And Zac, I know you have ideas on this, and I know that You talk about all the great things that happen with your kids. Are there ever times where you guys do have conflicts and you have to figure out how to resolve it peacefully?
Yeah, honestly, as you were saying that, I realized too that by having those conflicts with my kids, a great one is football. I didn't want my kid playing football, and now I'm his coach and he's playing. And that was a big discussion. Like, I completely disagreed with it. I disagreed with my kids going to public school this year, and they're in public school. So we not only do we have disagreements, I lost the disagreement. So, and we'll dive into that in a second. But that's, as you were saying, I was like, man, like, that's not common for a dad to acquiesce to that power and say, no, you choose your path. Now, obviously, they're not getting themselves hurt. Situations like that, like, I don't think we need to treat our viewers or anyone like they're going to go to that level of that one exception where you should tell them what to do. Well, yeah, if they're going to hit by a car, I'm going to grab them. You said never hit a kid. Come on. Like, you know what I'm saying. But by having an environment where my kids are allowed to be confrontational with my wife and I, we've removed the I don't care from them. And I just realized that just now. We were having a car ride the other day, and we were going somewhere. And in it, we were talking about our Halloween costumes. And I was like, I don't want to wear anything. Like, I'm not going to be cool this year. Like, we're going to go to some Halloween party, and I'm just going to chill. And the kids are talking about different things they're going to be or I'm going to be. And they tell each other, like, oh, I don't like that. Or I do like that. Or that's a good idea. Or that's a bad idea. If I ask them something, they don't say, I don't care. I can't tell you the last time I remember my kid just saying, I don't care. They do care about things, and they say it. And they're not afraid of their opinion being either contrary to what I want or their own being shut down by myself because I don't allow confrontation. I just dictate. So by not shutting them down and by allowing them to say something and not being judged for disagreeing with me, they care about everything. And they'll give you their input, and they feel that their voice matters. And I didn't even know that until literally just this moment. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like, they straight up like shat on me about not getting a Halloween costume. But even with each other, even with my wife, they'll say how they feel. And if that hurts your feelings, that's on you. Handle your feelings, but that's where they stand. And it's not like, oh, any disagreement's the end of the world. You must see my opinion. You must appreciate and respect. And you know what? You should come to my side of the table and have the same opinion as me. Well, dude, if you're trying to raise clones, you're missing the whole point of fatherhood, is to raise an individual. They are not your clones. They're extensions of your flesh and blood. They are your children, 100%. But they are not you. They are themselves. And to tie that into what I was saying about football and public school, I played football growing up. I had one concussion the whole time. My master's, my graduate study and my thesis were on concussive and subconcussive hits and what that's doing to the youth in youth sports. I've read more peer-reviewed journals and read more stories and watched more fucking videos on kids who have irreparable damage to their brains that I was like, my kid will never go into this. And my kid plays youth sports right now, football. How did we get to that point? I kept saying, no, we're not playing football. We're not playing football. Football is a sport designed, you use your head to go hit the dude with the ball. It's an aggressive sport. I also played football. So I spoke about every now and then my son would, well, why did you play? What did you like? What position did you do? He was predominantly a baseball player. So I never had anything to relate to him on. But when he spoke about football, I had all my stories to share. And he wanted that. And this past year, we were leaving a season where he wasn't going to be playing baseball. We were too late here in North Carolina to join their team. So he was going to have no sport. But football was still open. And he's like, hey, I really like your stories. I'm really thinking I want to get involved in this. Dad, I would really like to try this. I really want to go out and just to get a taste of it, to see what it's all about. And I was like, all right, man. I was like, well, understand this. If you go on to that, if I agree to this, you've got to meet me in the middle. We will train every single day together on proper form tackles. We will train every single day on watching film, on me showing you why you need to do things you need to do. If you can agree to go to that level with me, I'll agree to you playing football. Now, at that point, I had no intention of being his coach. But we showed up and there was no coach, so I ended up being the head coach. So now all of my kids tackle properly. All of them have their head up and they're not using their helmets to hit the kid. So I have literally drilled the best defense in my town in North Carolina. I'm putting that shit out there right now. The best tackling team when it comes to foundational tackle football. Guess what? No injuries across his head. Nobody's hurt their necks. Nobody's hurt their heads. Nobody's been taken off the field for anything other. It's usually lower extremities, like a busted, like some bruised legs and some bruised ankles. That's about it. Our worst injury was actually my son, who rolled his knee when he picked up a fumble, which is a whole different story. But also, public school. Dude, I'm so anti-mask, it's ridiculous. I hate all these mandates. I hate being told what to do. All of it pisses me off. We homeschooled last year. I was going to homeschool this year. My kids wanted to go to public school, and I was like, damn it. Like, both of them, I gave them the choice. I was like, guys, you're going to have to wear masks. And I know you both hate masks probably more than I do. I was like, if you go to public school, you have to follow their rules, and I don't get to choose that. You're going to have to sit at a desk. I don't get to choose that for you. You're choosing to leave my schoolhouse. They both said that's what we want to do. So instead of enforcing my preference on them in that confrontation, they both came to me, Dad, I know you don't like this, but we want to go to public school. Okay. You're going to make that choice, and then we're going to go through with it, and the consequences are yours to own. They understood. And guess what? They've been in public school all year. The school dropped the mask mandate. They've got all their friends going on. Their decision was probably the better decision. They went to the public school. They met the kids in this new town. They've got new friends. They feel like they're part of the club. We're not an isolated family. My wife is on the PTO. You know, we're going to all these things with all these other families. Would that have happened in the homeschools environment? I can't say either way, but I can say I did not want them to do it, but I listened to them and let them make the choice. And it was against my own choice, and I think it turned out for the better.
Yes, it did. I didn't know they had mask mandates in school in North Carolina.
Yeah, neither did I. And then I found out. I was like, man. So they did for a window when they said it was we were hitting a peak or whatever, but they got rid of it, I think, a week ago, and it's not coming back. The parents were, myself included, like, nope, we're good. Don't mask them.
No, there hasn't been any talk about it in South Carolina. That's what I was wondering. North Carolina hasn't flipped yet, so
we're going to bring them. Look, we already had our talk about that. That's another podcast episode.
Yes. No, this has been good, though. I hope the fathers out there, all the parents, they've learned something. They can start applying these tips, these tricks to help them in difficult spots. And that's what this is about, right? We want to create a better environment in home. We want to help fathers. We want to help mothers. Anybody who has a hand in raising children, we want to give them some tools so they can be better prepared. And the goal is to pass down these insights and this knowledge that we've learned, that we see our kids flourishing and thriving in a world that's just endless chaos.
Is that it? Is that your closing point?
That's it. That was my closing argument, brother.
I dig it. Listen, be preventative, give your child power, learn how to negotiate, have fun with it, decode the behavior, connect more, and do not be afraid of conflict. It's okay to be conflictive. That's why I shared that story. You know, I had no intention of sharing it, but since we were here, might as well dive all the way in to where I was like, nah, conflict is good as long as both parties are open and you're not going after each other, you're going after your ideas. But learning how to navigate conflict, that's a skill they should learn to take to adulthood.
Yeah. So that has been another episode of the Oak and Rock Fatherhood. I am Anthony Miglerino from peacefulfathers.com. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at peacefulfathers. This is Zac Small, thefamilyalpha.com, thefraternityofexcellence.com, and you can find him on social media at Zac Small.
Anthony, this is a good one, man. For all who tuned in, again, apply the things we talked about, experience the benefits. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. You guys take care.